I'm back. It's been a while. I'd apologize, but I don't feel sorry. Let's talk about some history, specifically the time some fake Romans tried to steal some bugs from China. Buckle up, lovely audience members, because I'm about to tell you about the people who called themselves Romans even though they didn't live anywhere near Rome. These people, called the Byzantines, were basically a spin-off of the Roman Empire, and they owe their start to one man, Emperor Diocletian. You see, in AD 285, Emperor Diocletian was ruling over a dying Rome. True, it would still limp on for another couple hundred years. Emperor Diocletian was kind of watching as it decayed. Its glory days were definitely behind it. Political and civil unrest, constant war with neighboring cultures, including the barbarians to the north, and an empire that was simply too big to sustain its own size, were all taking a toll on Roman society. So, Diocletian had an idea. Split the empire in two. To help him rule his new half-pyre, Diocletian took a page out of Caesar's early playbook and established three emperors, the Tetrarchy, made up of himself, Maxentius, and Constantine. Now, those that paid attention in your ancient history class may recognize that last name, Constantine. They ruled together for a time until Diocletian kicked the bucket, causing Maxentius and Constantine to war for control of the empire. I mean, this is Rome we're talking about, and this is like real Rome. So, of course, they fought for control of the throne after Diocletian died. That's just like a national pastime at this point. Anyway, Constantine eventually defeated Maxentius in AD 312, crowning himself emperor and declaring that he only won because of the divine help of the Christian God. Because of this, Constantine threw out the old Roman pantheon of gods, the old pagan gods, which they basically stole from the Greeks anyway, and established Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire. Oh, and he also moved the capital of the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire, from Rome to Byzantium in the east. On top of all that, he changed the name of Byzantium to Constantinople because he was such a humble guy. Constantine ruled for a while longer before passing in AD 337. After his death, the two halves of the Roman Empire split entirely, with the western half centered around Rome and the eastern half centered around Constantinople. The Western Roman Empire would fall around 100 years later after Constantine's death, but the Eastern Roman Empire, what historians call the Byzantine Empire, continued on. I say historians call them that because if you asked an actual Byzantine citizen where they were from, what they were, they would have said they were Romans, even though they didn't live in Rome, they didn't live anywhere close to Rome, and probably didn't know anyone in Rome after a while. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the silk trade for a second. Bear with me. I promise this will all make sense in a second. Okay, so today people who want to look like they have a lot of money, they waste it on brand names, like Supreme or Gucci or whatever. In the ancient world, flexing your wealth looked a little different. Instead of wearing name brands, because those didn't really exist, people would look at what you were wearing. Silk, precious gems, metal, like gold, silver. That was how you showed your wealth. Silk being a big one. The most expensive clothing was made from silk. It was soft, smooth, and most importantly, hard to find. This is because the silk trade was entirely controlled by China's ruling families, at least for the most part. There was some in India as well. They alone knew the secrets to silk production, and it was such a closely guarded secret that anyone who knew how to produce it could be put to death for sharing that information with the wrong people. This is how big a deal it was to China. If you knew how to make silk, you were considered basically a national asset. And if you shared that knowledge with people who didn't work with you or weren't supposed to know how to make silk, you and the person you talked to could both be killed. China made a killing off the silk trade, and people from the heart of China to the edges of Africa to the west sought out this cloth for themselves, willing to pay a pretty penny to get it. True, India also had a thriving silk trade of their own, but merchants of the time would frequently try to claim that their silk was from China, even if it wasn't, because people of the time viewed Chinese silk as being of a higher quality. Now, during the time of the event that we're going to be looking at, China was in an interesting political situation. I mean, they kind of always were in an interesting political situation. Those of you that have studied Chinese history know that it's constantly breaking apart, then forming back together under a new dynasty, and then it breaks apart again, and then, oh, here come the Mongols, and then it's just constantly in like a state of flux. But in this particular time, control of the country was split, with the Tuoba clan of the Zhanbei tribe, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, in control of northern China, and the Liang dynasty in control of southern China. It was the Liang dynasty who controlled the Chinese silk trade during this time, and much like the other dynasties that came before them, they were fiercely protective of their control over the silk market. That is, until they eventually lost that control. Okay, now this part of the story is speculation, admittedly. Some historians say it's a myth, others say it's an exaggerated version of true events, but regardless, I think it's an interesting story, and I wanted to share it with you anyway, because this is my channel and I do what I want. So the story goes that the Byzantines, during the rule of Justinian I, around AD 550, really wanted a piece of the silk trade. They also wanted to stop having to rely on their most bitter enemy, the Persian Sassanids, for access to Chinese silk. The Sassanids and the Byzantines were constantly fighting, but the Persian Sassanids were kind of in between China and the Byzantines. So in order to get that silk, it had to travel through Sassanid land. So they had to do business with their biggest enemy. You can see how that could be kind of a problem. So they wanted to kind of cut out the middleman there. But they couldn't really break the hold that India and China had on the market because they didn't know how to make silk, and neither country would share the secret with them. So according to the tale, Justinian sends 2 monks to China under the guise of an exchange of culture and ideas. They're Christian monks. He claims that he sent them to try to convert some people and share Byzantine ideas and Christianity. But in reality, they were given the secret objective of obtaining the silkworms needed to create silk. These monks set out on their journey and return not only with enough silkworm eggs to start a Byzantine silk trade, but also with escaped Chinese slaves with the knowledge to make the silk from the worms' cocoons. Over the course of decades, the eggs that they brought hatched, the worms reproduced, and a thriving silk trade was born in Constantinople. Another tale talks about a king of a land called Khotan, southwest of China, and yes, I said Khotan, not crouton, and how he stole the secret to producing silk himself, with the secrets he uncovered eventually falling into the hands of the Indian and the Byzantines and other cultures later on. Now, according to this story, the king of Khotan had no idea how silk was made or how any of that worked. But he knew about silk, and he knew that the Chinese held that knowledge as a secret for themselves. Well, he wanted to learn that secret. So he concocted a pretty ingenious plan. As a sign of humility and in praise to the emperor of China, the king asked if he could marry one of the emperor's daughters. The emperor was flattered by this offer and approved of the marriage. Then the king sent a messenger to his princess bride-to-be, and this is pretty clever, saying that he did not have silk, nor did he know how to make it. So, if this Chinese princess wanted to continue wearing silk, which she had been, because she's Chinese royalty, she would have to bring what he needed to make silk with her to him. so that they could make it themselves. The princess, not wanting to give up her luxurious silk dresses, smuggled the eggs out in an elaborate headdress, thus giving the king of Khotan all he needed to start his own silk trade. In all reality, it's more likely that the Byzantines simply learned how to make silk from a craftsman in India or Central Southwestern Asia, far closer to home. It's unlikely that they would have sent monks on such a long, dangerous journey to learn what other cultures far closer to them have already shown that they understood. I know that's not the most exciting end to the story, but reality is often far less Ocean's 11 and is, far more often just kind of bland. But that's the reality of the situation. Now, let's take a look at the question of the day. Today's question is, do you think the Byzantine Empire was wrong for trying to steal the secrets of silk production for themselves? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more, you can always check out my sources cited in the descriptions of all of my videos. I try to keep the sources, friendly to, I guess layman is the best word, people who aren't historians themselves, so that you can go and read a bit more about this topic on your own. Please remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more. I hope you have a great rest of your day, you lovely, lovely people. Bye.